Auspicious greetings. Good to see everyone. Welcome to our monthly Thanks Buddha. It's Friday Dharma Talk, an hour of Dharma and community connections. My name is Cindy, based in San Diego, here in Shifang Temple. Before we get started, I want to go over a few logistics. Tonight's program is hybrid. So for those on Zoom, kindly check your microphone is muted. There will be an opportunity for questions for everyone to ask questions at the end. So for Zoom meetings, for Zoom attendees, please put your questions and comments in the chat box or raise your digital hand. For in-person attendees, please go to the designated hot seat to ask your questions or share your comments. We are honored to have our guest speaker, Dr. Allan Kornberg, with us tonight. Dr. Kornberg is a pediatrician where he will share with us tonight on the power of nutrition, plant-based nutrition for health and wellness. He also works with charities, including Dharma Voices for Animals. For now, please help me and welcome Dr. Kornberg.
Hi there, and thank you so much for inviting me. I appreciate it. I will share my my screen now, since I'll use slides. Can everyone see that? The first slide is just the label plant-based nutrition and has a pic of a bunch of fruits and veggies and so on. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, again, thank you, Cindy. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. I'll go through my talk, and looking forward particularly to answering questions as we have them at the end. So here we go. I'll show this at the end as well. You'll have my slides. That's my contact information should anybody want to reach out to me later on. I've been part of the board of Dharma Voices for Animals for about 6 years now, and I work with a half a dozen charities, a combination of plant-based nutrition charities and animal protection charities. And my primary home now for my plant-based nutrition work is with a charity called Balanced, where I'm the medical director. And so I just listed some of my contact information there. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And there's my phone number. And I'm happy to connect with people after the talk as well. So today's talk, we'll spend a few minutes talking about One Health, the concept of One Health. We'll talk about lifestyle medicine, a little bit about climate and diet. I'm not a climate scientist. I'm a pediatrician with experience and focus around healthy nutrition. But we'll say a few words about climate and animal agriculture. Public health, eating animals, power of nutrition is the focus of the talk, and then some words about myths of vegan diets and nutrients and so on. So that's the outline, and here we go. One Health, just to outline it, is a concept that recognizes that the health of people, which makes all the sense in the world, is closely connected to the health of animals and our shared environment. And just a little schematic that shows that. And so that it's one world, and that our own species staying healthy depends upon planetary health, and of course depends upon animal health. And there's a compassion element and a faith-based element there for us here today as well. Just noting a couple of that I work with Dharma Voices for Animals and also with Balanced, for health, for sustainability, for compassion. So now I'm more on the doc clinical side of things. Lifestyle medicine, there's a wonderful professional organization noted at the bottom called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And so physicians in general, people in my trade, are known for prescribing medications, doing surgery. We fix disease, or at least we aim to. And lifestyle medicine is about primarily preventing disease through good lifestyle, and then also mitigating and treating existing disease through good lifestyle. And so you can see I highlighted on the bottom today's talk, really, which is A healthy diet, predominantly a whole food, plant-based diet, is a key, amongst the most important parts of lifestyle medicine. Other attributes, some of which may be common sense, but easy to say and hard to do, that people live healthier, longer lives if they have a life purpose as community, friends, family, and so on. However one approaches stress management, and it may very well be for many of us here that meditation and mindfulness is a key part of that. Good sleep is really, really important, not abusing substances, of course, and exercise. The current recommendations are to get at least 150 minutes a week of moderately rigorous exercise. So that's about 20 minutes a day. And also, where possible, some resistance, some weight exercise as well. But today's about diet, and diet is probably the most important, certainly one of the most important parts of lifestyle medicine in general. So blue zones, and we'll get into this as a key example. Blue zones are disparate areas around the world where different ethnic groups, to some extent different lifestyles, but some commonalities. And you can see that one of the blue zones, which I'll define in a minute, is not far from San Diego. It's Loma Linda, California, which is just east of LA and has a large Seventh-day Adventist population. And so blue zones are known for very high longevity. And from a population health point of view, the average population, if the average people in a population are living 10 years or more longer than expected, that's huge. A couple of years on a population basis is huge. Has a good number of centenarians, people who live to be 100 years of age or more. The lowest morbidity, mortality of middle-aged people, and also not only living longer, but living better, much lower rates of dementia, Alzheimer's, and the like. And so, as I said, blue zones are geographically separate. There's a blue zone in Okinawa, in Japan. There's one in Greece and Costa Rica. I talked about Loma Linda, but strikingly similar lifestyle behaviors, especially around diet. A whole food, plant-based predominant diet. Not everyone eats a totally vegan diet, but some places it's called a Mediterranean diet, but a whole food, plant-based predominant diet. So a little bit of a busy slide, but it's worth going through. So there was a long, I'm in medicine. I've done some clinical research myself and published some papers. The study referred to as the Adventist Health Study, and it's easy to read about if anybody is so inclined. Nearly 100,000 people in this population study, so that's huge. And what was found was done over a good number of years. And so the Adventists are a good population to study. They have a similar lifestyle, and some are vegan, some are vegetarian, some are omnivorous, making it easy to look for differences from a research point of view. So no matter the cholesterol level, diabetes status, blood pressure level, or metabolism in general, it was found in this 100,000 person population that vegetarians have lower health risks than people that eat meat. The data showed a progressive weight increase when one goes from a vegan diet to a vegetarian to an omnivorous diet. The average weight is, or BMI, and the weight for height is higher. What's interesting is that levels of cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, and metabolic syndrome, which is sort of kind of pre-diabetes, all have the same trend. The closer you are to being vegan, the lower the health risk. And type 2 diabetes, which is, as you likely know, highly correlated with obesity and poor diet, its prevalence in vegans and vegetarians was half that of non-vegetarians, even after controlling for other risk factors. So it also makes the point that eating a healthy, whole food, plant-based diet is not a guarantee of perfect health, but on a population basis, it hugely increases our opportunity to live a healthy life. I would add as well, while doctors and scientists usually don't speak about themselves very much, I'm 69 years old. I've been eating a vegan diet for half my life. I'm on no medications. I still I still run, not like I did when I was 30, but I can still run. And my cholesterol levels, and LDL, bad cholesterol, having just been to the doc, really, really good. So, for me, it's been not only about, and I first became vegan. For me, it was all about ethics, compassion. It was about the animals. And as I found that I became healthier myself, I got more involved in the importance of healthy diet in medical practice. All right, segueing for a little while then, and I'll stop talking about myself. Climate and diet. Everyone is worried about climate change, the climate crisis, and other environmental degradation. And animal agriculture is a piece of greenhouse gas emissions, a piece of climate change. So this slide is from a University of Michigan research center, the Center for Sustainable Systems. And it shows, so this is pounds of CO2 per serving of food, for an average serving of food. And you can see on the left of this graph, beef, cheese, pork, poultry, eggs, milk, beef being the worst for greenhouse gas emissions. The bars are high, and as soon as one gets to plant-based nutrition, the bars are pretty much asymptotic, really almost no greenhouse gas emissions. So there's a huge correlation. And if people would stop eating animals, aside from, of course, the compassion and non-harm side of that, our own health, there would be less climate change. How much does animal agriculture contribute to climate change? Different people say different things. My own sense is probably 15 to 20% or so. Different studies give different numbers. There was one study from World Watch, but they're very committed advocates saying that about half of all greenhouse gas emissions come from animal agriculture. The UN says 15%. The New York Times did a really good review of the research papers and found 15 or 14.5 to 18%. So a well-published study in sustainability, 16.5%. And then the last study, where it says only 3%, was researchers at Texas A&M, and they're animal ag scientists. So they work on the promoting eating animals and the animal agriculture side of things. They found only 3%. And, there was a book written a number of years ago. It's called Lies, Damn Lies and Statistics. And so this is not physics in a laboratory. It's, people can sort of kind of find what they're looking for, but it was dramatic that the animal agriculture scientist said it's only 3%, and that's wrong. It's probably 15 to 20% of all climate change is due to animal agriculture, in my view. So public health. So we'll spend most of our time talking about individual health, talking about having a healthy lifestyle, reducing the risk of diabetes, heart disease, cancers, stroke, and so on. But on the broader population health side of things, you may know that there's for many years, there's a big issue in medical practice that many bacteria now have become resistant to many of the antibiotics we use. And so some of that comes from physicians, people and nurse practitioners, physicians assistants, clinicians, perhaps overprescribing when someone has a viral sore throat or that sort of thing, getting an antibiotic anyhow, which is a bad thing to do in medicine. The bacteria evolve just like we do, just like higher species do when they become resistant. But it's striking, it's absolutely striking that in America, over 70% of all antibiotics that are used in the United States are used on factory farms. And so this creates a hotbed for resistant bacteria, which harms people and animals as well, but certainly humans. It's also striking. I mean, one would ask why are most antibiotics in the United States and other global north wealthy countries used in factory farms, used in animal agriculture? Is because the conditions are so horrible, so terrible. Because in medical practice, one uses antibiotics when someone is sick, not on every person basis, on a prophylactic basis. But in factory farms, the conditions are so abysmal, so horrible, that the animals are all given antibiotics to try to reduce the amount of infection and have them grow as quickly as possible. It's just horrible. And the point here being that it's bad for public health, for human health. Foodborne illnesses, Salmonella, Shigella, Yersinia, Campylobacter, Toxoplasmosis. There are others. Typically come from eating animals. Salmonella causes a really bad diarrhea, and in rich countries there's not a lot of deaths. It's a really miserable illness. In poor countries, a lot of deaths. The medical intervention is not as good. And these diseases come either from eating animals directly or from eating fruits and vegetables that were grown in manure as fertilizer. It all comes from animal feces. The third bullet, pardon the, by the way, pandemics, we're sort of kind of coming out of COVID as a pandemic now, although it's now endemic. It's not going away. COVID will be with us for about forever, but for a long time. And so pandemics, most epidemics come to our species from our interaction with animals. Factory farming, wet markets has been hypothesized as the initial cause of COVID in Wuhan, China, although some evidence that it may have been a virology laboratory and not from animal agriculture, and that's still being debated. But most pandemics, SARS, most of the flu pandemics, and so on, have come from animal agriculture. And deforestation, as we destroy environment and have animals live closer to us, their infections spread to humans. And when bacteria and viruses jump species, they tend to be nastier, more invasive, of course, more aggressive, of course, worse disease in the new species host. Michael Greger, a colleague, some of you may know him or know of him. He's the author of How Not to Die and How to Survive a Pandemic and a number of other books. And so, his quote is to the point. He also is the founder of a wonderful charity called Nutrition Facts, and worth looking at. Michael's quote is, "If you actually want to create global pandemics, build factory farms. It's the hotbed for pandemics, given how closely the animals are kept together. Of course, horrible for the animals who suffer terribly." Okay, so the core part of my talk this evening, power of nutrition. We'll talk more about individual health. So this is from the U.S. CDC, the Center for Disease Control, which most people know of more recently from being the sort of primary medical COVID public agency, but looks at disease in general in the United States. And so this is from a couple of years ago, the leading causes of death in the U.S., and COVID being number 3, which is, of course, new and unusual, but heart disease and cancer being the top 2, then accidents, stroke, respiratory disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, flu, and kidney disease. Most of these are diet related. And then even more striking, or bad diet related, I should say, an even more striking study, it's a busy slide, it's Lancet, which is a British medical journal, one of the top tier medical journals in the world, has sponsored a research program called the Global Burden of Disease, and has studied the leading causes of death in 195 countries, which is pretty much every country in the world, with just a few exceptions. And so you can see on this bar graph, these are the top 10 risk factors around the world for death in 2017. It hasn't changed much since then, except COVID, of course, would be high on the list. Dietary risks in general, which of course speaks to heart disease and stroke in a big way. High blood pressure is a huge cause of premature death. Tobacco, high blood sugar or diabetes, pulmonary air pollution, high body mass index, obesity, high LDL cholesterol, which also is diet. It's interesting, and while malnutrition, inadequate calories is horrible. People that adults and children that don't get enough calories and suffer from hunger and its worst form, starvation, is horrible. It's a you look at this bar graph on a scientific population basis, it's relatively much less than the diseases that are caused by overconsumption versus underconsumption. You can see alcohol's there, and impaired kidney disease, which has a number of causes, but diet being one of them as well. So poor diet is an overconsumption, overabundance, eating bad foods and eating animals is the leading cause of death around the world. So what to eat? Everyone knows this, but fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts and seeds, and not on this schematic, but legumes, lentils, peas and beans, of course, are as well. And so you can just see this is U.S. data. I'm just put in a fairly simplified format. The top. Let's look on the top left for fruits. You can read the slide. Recommended by the authorities that each adult should eat 200 to 300 grams per day of fruit, but actually we only eat about 94 grams per day. So you can see it's a 3 to 1. We only eat on a population base about 1/3 of as much fruit as we should. And you can see for whole grains and for nuts and seeds, it's an even worse ratio. And for vegetables, it's about 2 or 2.5 to 1 what we should be eating for our health versus what we are eating. Sorry, I have an empty slide there. Apologies. So inflammation and aging, animal products. I hate the term from compassion and ethics point of view. From a health point of view, we talk about people eating animal products, people that are omnivorous, and so those tend to be inflammatory foods, which speed up aging. And so you can see there's a high correlation with Alzheimer's disease for sure, Parkinson's to some extent, heart disease, multiple sclerosis, increased morbidity, mortality in general, diabetes, insulin resistance, osteoporosis. Probably about 40% of cancers, GI tract cancers, also breast and prostate, have a high correlation with eating inflammatory foods, which are animal foods. So I've been talking mostly about, as we say in the trade, primary prevention, not getting disease by having a healthy lifestyle, starting with healthy nutrition. There's also well-published, well done randomized controlled trials that demonstrate that for a number of diseases, once one has the disease, that converting from a typical, I'll just call it a Western, omnivorous, high saturated fat, high animal consumption diet to a whole food plant-based diet can sometimes entirely reverse disease, and if not that, at least mitigate disease a great deal, reduce the disease burden a great deal, and reduce the need for medication, sometimes surgery. There was, I should have included this in my slides, but there was a cartoon went around a little while ago, and it shows a cardiovascular heart surgeon talking to a patient, describing that this patient who has heart disease needs a 3-vessel bypass and needs to be put on a heart lung pump, have his chest cracked open, 6 hours of surgery, some chance of death from the surgery, a long recovery, very, very taking, veins from the legs to use as the to use as the new vessels to support the heart. So, very, very, very invasive. And the surgeon's explaining this to the patient, and then says, alternatively, you can switch to a vegan diet. And the patient says, "Doc, that sounds really excessive to me." And of course, it's meant in jest, but the there's really good evidence for all of better blood test results, longer life, and the ability to have more exercise, live a healthier life And even on cardiac catheterization and MRIs, looking at the coronary artery vessels, a reduction in calcium, a reduction in sort of a vessel widening, an improvement in the coronary arteries, the less junk and cleaner arteries. When somebody who already has had a heart attack and has had a typical unhealthy lifestyle, starting with diet, and then switches to a vegan diet, a whole food plant-based diet, that they improve dramatically. For type 2 diabetes, there's the best evidence of all that many people who have type 2 diabetes, which reduces both the longevity and the ability to live a healthy life for the years one has, since it causes artery disease, it can damage blood vessels and damage one's feet and lead to amputations, renal disease, heart disease, and so on. There's striking evidence that people with type 2 diabetes, if they switch to a whole food plant-based diet, can sometimes be essentially cured, and if not that, at least have major mitigation of disease, come off insulin, reduction of their medications, all of that. Hypertension, high blood pressure, makes all the sense in the world, starting with salt, eating a whole food plant-based diet, watching one's salt, and also some of the other sorts of stress reduction kinds of things like meditation, mindfulness, can be dramatically helpful. Rheumatoid arthritis, which is an inflammatory autoimmune disease, has been well shown to benefit from a whole food plant-based diet. And interestingly, and there was just a study done in the Netherlands, which shows that osteoarthritis, which is the even more common degenerative arthritis, the kind of arthritis people get from just getting older, and of course many athletes have it as well. Wasn't intuitive that the arthritis that many people get from just getting older and from overuse and all that improves with a whole food plant-based diet as well. And there was this well-done study. Colleagues I've met, a couple of people in the Netherlands who have demonstrated this and are publishing this research. It's huge. Okay. Sorry for the busy medical-ish sort of slides, but I'm trying to pass on clinical information. So what about plant-based meats, quote unquote? Impossible, beyond. There's a study done out of Stanford, Stanford Medical School, up in the Bay Area, or Silicon Valley is, one of the best medical schools in the country, if not the world. And so what they did is they took a number of people who are omnivorous, eat meat, and because the question is, do the newer plant-based, quote unquote, meats, the fake meats, if you will, which are fairly high in salt and fairly high in saturated fat, are they better for us or less worse, at least for us, than meat, real meat from animals? The older plant-based meats like tofurkey, or field roast and so on, those clearly are maybe not quite as healthy as a whole food plant-based diet, but healthier than meat for sure. And so, but those have had a smaller market penetration, and the business case for again, quote unquote, meats like Impossible Burger and Beyond and so on is that they taste like meat from animals, not quite but close, and so will appeal to a much larger market, much larger audience. And so question is, are they as unhealthy as meat from animals, or maybe not quite as much? It's a case control study. Everybody in the study, all the patients, all the people being investigated, are meat eaters, and so half of them ate their regular diet and had tests done and so on as the control the first 8 weeks. The other half ate no meat, but were given Impossible burgers and those products. And then after 8 weeks, the two groups switched. And so TMAO, sorry, that's a blood test marker of inflammation. The higher one's TMAO level, the more likely one is to have a heart attack and or drop dead. It's a blood test that measures inflammation, and it's highly correlated with heart disease. LDL is the bad cholesterol. Weight, of course, is not good for heart disease. And so it was found that the people during the 8 weeks that the meat eaters stopped eating meat and ate plant-based meat, quote unquote, that they had an improvement in their biological markers. 8 weeks is too short a time period to see if there's a change in heart attacks and that sort of thing. But in terms of the measures that go along with heart disease, their measures were better when they stopped eating animals for those 8 weeks. So that's reassuring, very reassuring. It was also interesting, at least interesting to me, is that the group that was randomized at first was given plant-based meats, and then after 8 weeks they went back to their regular animal meat-based diet. They kept better inflammatory markers like TMAO. Their blood tests were better for a while, even when they went back to meat. And the conjecture is that their microbiome, their gut bacteria, that they had a residual or longer lasting effect, even beyond the time when they went back to eating meat, which is interesting and good for health. So whole food plant-based food is healthier, but I mean, eating some of these quote unquote plant-based sausages and so on, and I'll have them from time to time, and everything in balance and moderation has been shown to be healthier than eating meat. Okay, so segueing, myths and nutrients. So where do you get your protein from? Apologies, but I get asked that question all the time, sometimes by people that really want to know, and sometimes by folks that just don't want to face the fact that you do get all the protein you need from plant products. And so I can't help but obviously gorillas and elephants are entirely vegan, and they somehow manage to build up huge muscle mass. So and anyone who's eating an 1,800 or 2,000 calorie a day plant-based diet with any variety in diet gets more than enough protein. I can talk more about that during the Q&A if you like. It's really only two ways to not get enough protein. One is severe malnutrition. So those horrible, terrible pictures, and if anybody's had experience in one's own life, seeing children with swollen bellies and wasting away, or people in refugee camps or concentration camps, or horrible, terrible conditions. If one is not getting enough calories, also not getting enough protein, will suffer from protein deficiency. And then otherwise, if you're getting enough calories, unless you're only eating one protein source, there's some, one grain. There's some unusual examples in sub-Saharan Africa where people eat a plant-based diet and live on one grain source. But any mixing at all of the variety of plant-based foods, you get all the protein you need. No questions asked. Okay, so this is the position statement of the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, the professional association for nutritionists for dietitians in America. Just summary not summary, it's quotes from the article. It is the position of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics that appropriately I can't see what that appropriately planned, vegetarian, including vegan diets are healthful, nutritionally adequate, and may provide health benefits with the prevention and treatment of certain diseases. These diets are appropriate vegan diets for all stages of the life cycle. And I'm a pediatrician, including pregnancy, lactation, infancy, childhood, adolescence, older adults, and for athletes. Plant-based diets are more environmentally sustainable than diets rich in animal products. They use fewer natural resources and are associated with much less environmental damage. Vegetarians and vegans are at reduced risk of certain health conditions, including ischemic hardening of the arteries, ischemic heart disease or heart attacks, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, certain kinds of cancer, and of course obesity. Low intake of saturated fat and high intake of vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, soy products, nuts, and seeds, rich in fiber and phytochemicals, are characteristics of vegetarian and vegan diets that produce lower total and low density lipoprotein cholesterol levels, bad cholesterol, and better serum glucose, better sugar control. These factors contribute to reduction of chronic disease. And I'll say more about this in a minute. Vegans need reliable sources of vitamin B12, such as fortified foods or supplements. So these are the nutrition, and dietitians know much more about nutrition than physicians, doctors do. And although most people see their doctor and not a dietitian. So just a list of some of the important nutrients. I would just point out that any diet, any kind of diet, one has to be thoughtful and careful about getting adequate and appropriate nutrients. For plant-based diets, vegan diets, there are some nutrients, B12 being the main one, that one has to be thoughtful and careful about. For a typical Western American omnivorous animal product-based diet, there's some nutrients there that one has to be careful about as well. It's not as if one diet is easy and one is hard. They're different, and net plant-based diets are much, much healthier. I've talked about protein. I'll talk about that more if you have questions. Fiber is crazy important. It helps, it reduces the risk of heart disease. It helps to manage blood sugar. Of course, constipation, diverticulosis. It fills us up. Fiber only comes from plant sources. There is zero fiber in animal sources, and fiber is only from plant sources. Calcium is important. One can get enough calcium from plant-based diets. It's particularly leafy greens. I would say though that calcium, it is somewhat hard to get enough calcium from any diet, and so I think it's a good idea. The plant-based milks that are calcium fortified, those can be a glass of that a day can be a really good way to bump up one's calcium and not get into trouble with enough intake. I would also say that around for people that eat a vegan diet, when one is purchasing plant-based milks, it's a good idea to make sure they're calcium supplemented. Also, make sure they don't have a lot of sugar dumped in there, because some do that. That they're fairly low in sodium, especially as one gets older, and that they have protein. And so, so soy and pea and flax, plant-based milks, are high in protein, and almond and oat and some of the others are not. And so just look at the label, but and I know this can be very confusing. For me, it's become second nature. But plant-based milks are very healthy, and again, recommending getting one has about 1/3 of the daily calcium requirement and has protein. One gets plenty of iron from plant-based sources. B12 is different, and so I take a B12. I take a multivitamin. It's easy once a day. There are some people, some vegans who feel like, I'm eating a natural diet. I shouldn't have to take a supplement for B12. And the thing is that when we lived in nature and we were gatherers or hunter-gatherers, there's a lot of B12 does not come from animals, it comes from bacteria in the soil. And so, but the food that we eat is so cleaned, is so cleansed, that the B12 is washed away from plant products. It's in animal, it's in meat, because the animals eat plants and soil that has B12, and then the B12 gets in their body and their muscle. So I recommend taking a B12 supplement. B12 deficiency is bad, and it's so easy to avoid. And when someone says, well, it's natural, it's in nature. Well, I would say, well, you live in San Diego or you live in Boston, you don't live in nature. And so take your B12. Vitamin D, it's all about sunlight. I live in Boston, so for 6, 7, 8 months of the year, I take a vitamin D supplement. You're in San Diego, you probably don't need to. If you're outside getting any sun at all, you're fine. Omega-3, that's the healthy healthy fat. It comes from a number of plant-based products, especially nuts and seeds. It has a number of health benefits for us. Soy is healthy. There's there have been these stories. They're not true that soy can raise the risk of breast cancer or prostate cancer because there's compounds in soy that, in organic chemical terms, are somewhat similar to estrogens. There's well-done studies in the U.S. and China showing that that soy actually reduces the risk of breast cancer, particularly when one starts eating a lot of soy as a young person. And it's just wrong that it's a risk for cancers. I talked about supplements already, and I'm not a purist. I think taking a supplement's a good idea, easy to do. Just winding down now. So what about doctors? Why don't doctors talk more about nutrition? Well, we're not trained in nutrition. It hasn't. All the years I've been around medicine, it hasn't changed, and it hasn't. I've done work with clinicians in a number of different countries, and it's consistent that we just don't get trained in nutrition. It's terrible. I think also for doctors, change is hard, and we weren't trained in nutrition, and so it feels like all thumbs to us. I think also some doctors will say my pun there. It's about genetics. It's Darwin's fault. I mean, what's happened from an evolutionary point of view is that we evolved from scarcity. Until rich societies, and certainly at least until agriculture, but until really rich societies. So for most of human evolution, the risk of dying around food was not getting enough, not getting too much, and so we're conditioned from a biological point of view to eat fat, to eat salt, to eat sugar. Doctors know how to write prescriptions for pills. They don't know how to write a prescription for a healthy diet, and my organization is working to change that. And there just aren't a lot of dietitians around, and so we need to people that do what I do need to build into the infrastructure that doctors are able to. They're not opposed to speaking to healthy nutrition. They just aren't comfortable. It's awkward, and so that has to change. It will take a generation for that to change. And then I think also most doctors eat meat, and so they have a point of view. Which I'm a doctor. I'm healthy. I try to take care of myself. I eat meat. It's probably okay to eat meat. It's not true, but I think there's some cognitive dissonance or subconscious about that. You'll get those. The slides are obviously available after the talk. Just a number of organizations that have good information. Nutrition Facts is Michael Greger's. Blue Zones I spoke about. A number of others. Harvard's got a good program. PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, does really good work. I talked about Lifestyle Medicine. Plantrition Project is another clinical-based program. Balanced is my organization. Wholesome Wave looks at plant-based nutrition from the perspective of people that are impoverished, people that are in poverty. And I also do work with an organization called PAN, Physicians Association for Nutrition, PAN-INT International, and does whole food plant-based nutrition work around the world. I support some of that organization's work in the U.S. and particularly working with folks in India, and where we have a great program on plant-based nutrition. And we're trying slowly but surely to get a program built in China, which is challenging for a number of reasons, starting with the government. But we're slowly but surely trying to make that happen. Gregor, again, you can tell I'm a fan. We should all be eating fruits and vegetables as if our lives depended on it, because they do. And by FACLM is a fellow of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And that's me again, just so you have my contact info. And, I'm here for Dharma Voices for Animals. So it's, Allan at dharmavoicesforanimals.org or Allan K at balanced.org, and my office phone number there as well. And we'll send the slides around. So that's a wrap. It's been a pleasure. And I'm happy to take questions. And I think Cindy, I think you're gonna curate this or help me out here, as if you will. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Kornberg, for such a insightful nutrition talk. And now, everyone, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to put in the chat box or raise your hand, and you can ask Dr. Kornberg yourself. And also for the in-person, please kindly go to your designated hot seat to share your comments and questions so that we all can see. And anyone online, do you have any questions or comments to share on this particular talk? Dr. Kornberg, I have Marissa to in person. She has a question or comments, I believe.
Yeah, please.
Hi, Dr. Kornberg. Thank you for your talk. I'm a clinician myself, so it was kind of interesting to listen to you. And, I had a couple questions. TMAO, I'm not familiar with. I was literally like kind of Googling as you were talking about it, because that's relatively new, it feels like. And as I'm reading this, it seems like it's also slightly controversial, because everything that's TMAO is, that's all associated with plant and meat based. So sort of playing devil's advocate, not on purpose. But how do you tease out, like as statistics, you're saying how, lies, biggest lies are statistics.
Yep.
And the argument for my meat-based friends, and I'm on myself too, full disclosure here, is a lot of times we see a lot of literature about plant-based and everything, and veganism and everything, and there's an agenda behind it. And it creates a antagonistic viewpoint, I think, sometimes when you're trying to communicate with somebody about plant-based diet, but I think people start questioning about, like, well, what research is right, what research is wrong, like, is your research, geared to try to convert me, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm throwing it out there because it is a question. And the second personal one, more for me, is more like, I can't stay full on a vegan diet. What do I do? Like, I'm like hungry, and I can't think if I'm hungry, and I'm seeing patients. That's a separate. But the first one, I want to say in a way that it's like, I want good research, and and I want to trust good research. And a lot of times when I read both sides, like, every side has their, like, and we all have inherent bias in our research. And how do we present it in a way that's honest about, plant-based diet? Talking about omega-3, people talk about algal oil instead of fish oil, but
right. No. And so just, you've raised a number of important questions there. I'll try to get to it as well as I can, but I do think that's omega-3, which is the health benefits of omega-3 is still is probably real value in omega-3. I think there's good evidence, but it's still a research question in progress, as you know, and there's assuming omega-3 is useful for our health, and it probably is. There's no evidence that omega-3 from plant-based sources is better than from fish oil. It's from omega-3 from fish oil is omega-3. So if someone chooses to take an omega-3 supplement, for example, or chooses to get it through diet, eating fish would certainly be fine from a human health point of view. So some people may choose not to for an ethical perspective, but that's different. So, but it's from a health point of view. There's compelling evidence around the world that people that eat sort of 85 to 90% or so of a plant-based diet, shorthand being a Mediterranean kind of diet, some fish and so on, that's healthier. People live longer, they live healthier, they have less heart disease, they have less cancer on a population basis. There's no evidence that going from, say, 90% to 100% is healthier still. So a predominantly whole food plant-based diet, there's plenty of population evidence, and it's always hard to prove you can't do randomized controlled trials in nutrition, right? So, but there's lots of well-done cohort studies, case control studies, population studies that show that a predominantly plant-based diet is healthy. On the TMAO, the cardiologists I talk with say it's a good marker of inflammation, and and they believe in that. The last thing I would say about lies, damn lies, and statistics, so that I try to be careful, and you can tell. I mean, I do animal protection work, so I clearly have the risk of confirmation bias, right? The folks that there's some studies that are just not done well. That's true for any part of medicine, right? But it's more the people that everybody is trying to make a case of some sort, as you said. It's not so much that the studies are made up data. It's not that. It's people cherry pick, right? They'll choose the studies that make their case. So that's always a risk. I think if the very last thing you talked about, and then I'm going to stop because we should take some other questions, is for some people will eat a entirely and nearly entirely vegan diet. They'll say they feel much better right away. Some people they don't. So it's it's individual. I think that eating a primarily plant-based diet and eating, it doesn't have to be whole food plant-based. Eating some processed foods, some processed plant-based foods is still better than eating cured meat and grilled meat. And there's as there's compelling evidence that that processed meat is bad for us. So that sorry, that was a lot. Let me stop. I hope that got to some of what you were asking about. So
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marissa. Dr. Kornberg, we have one question or comments from Lee Ref Brownie. She said, as a woman post-menopause, I find that I have quite a negative effect when I eat soy. I'm guessing it is due to the estrogen, but I decided that I don't need fake meat. I am vegetarian, not vegan. Maybe I am just allergic to soy.
Yeah, I only know, that's a really good question. It may be an allergy to soy, maybe the soy protein. It may be there's from all that I've read and the people I've spoken with, there's just not evidence that that the phytoestrogens in soy really affect human health in a in the way that if you were taking estrogen supplement. It's also, again, everybody's situation is individual. It's lots of postmenopausal women who take estrogen feel better when they take estrogen, right? So that's a whole complex, the trade-offs and all that. But so I would guess that that's not about the estrogen effect, but everybody's different, and I couldn't really say more than that. And there are, if one is vegetarian or vegan, there are, it's soy is, is a good source of plant-based protein, but it's not the only one. So, have to work a little harder, but there are other sources. So.
Okay. Have one question from Linda. Do you have any suggestions on dealing with family members who don't respect my vegetarian diet and insist on trying to feed me meat?
Yeah, welcome to the club. And my parents, may they rest in peace. They kept trying with me. So, it's never easy. It never helps to, in all human interactions. I mean, in behavior in general, if somebody's being difficult and assertive with someone, it doesn't usually help to do that. It doesn't help to just sort of push back hard. It's to, if someone is coming from a perspective of worried about our health versus they're just trying to be obnoxious and irritating, that would change how one would approach that. But I think starting with, thank you for, this sounds a little contrived, but depends who the person is. But thank you for worrying about my health, and let me tell you about how I take care of my health, kind of thing. I also find sometimes that when one asks, responds in the form of a question, it's less off-putting than being very declarative and direct about saying this is the right way to do things. I think vegans are sometimes described as being too preachy, so that may not always be true, but we should be cognizant of it's easier to affect change with well, not with agave than with vinegar, or with honey than vinegar. But I think it's except if somebody is just trying to be obnoxious and difficult, it's appreciating and respecting and identifying that they're worried about our health, and that we would explain that this is healthy for us and why. But we've all been there.
Okay. We have Linda say thank you. I think there is some worry about health, but they are the ones on blood pressure medication, not me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Worried about a plant-based diet and blood pressure medications? Is that what the?
Linda just said thank you. She said thank you. I think there is some worry about health, but they are the ones that has blood pressure and is taking the medication.
Yeah. I hear it. Okay, thanks.
Yes. Susan and myself, we have somewhat of the same question. My question is, what brands do you recommend for B12 and vitamin D? And Susan has a question, how much B12 do you recommend daily? And do you have recommendations about the form, whether it's pap or liquid, and the preferred brands?
I do. That's really above my pay grade, and something that probably some dietitians would know more about than I do. I've forgotten so let me answer that in a different way. So that B12, like all B vitamins, are water soluble vitamins. It's hard to take too much. And if we take more than we need, we just pee it out. So the amount of B12 in most supplements that are offered is much higher than the RDA, the recommended dietary allowance. So I would just take enough. The multivitamin that I take has many times the minimum amount of B12, and you can't hurt yourself by taking too much. People don't get into trouble by taking too much B12. They get into trouble if they take no B12. So the only issue is for someone who is eating a 100% vegan diet and not getting a supplement. That person will get themselves sick over time, or runs a real risk of that. Other than that, I don't have recommendations on the capsule or tablet or the company or that sort of thing, and for B12, and pretty much anything's okay. For vitamin D, there's some theoretical discussions about the different forms of D. There's also people that are vegan on a ethical basis will choose a vegan form of vitamin D. But other than that, there's some discussion in literature about the pros and cons of different varieties of vitamin D. Those are really very nuanced, subtle sorts of things, and one should get 2,000 international units a day of vitamin D. If you're face and you're wearing a short sleeve shirt and you're out in the sun 20 minutes a day in California, 2-3 times a week, you don't need D. And if you're living in a place with cold winters, you should get probably 2,000 IU, at least 1,000 IU, and it really doesn't make much difference, what the company and format is. It's probably not a bit. The last thing I would say about supplements is that they are not regulated in the same way that prescription medications are. And I hope I'm not offending anyone who is going to feel like I'm just supporting the big companies here and so on. But the larger companies, the drug companies or the bigger consumer product companies, they have good quality control in their factories. If they say it's 2,000 units of vitamin D, it probably is pretty close. And some of the kind of more hippy-dippy, small, local company kind of companies, you don't always get what it says on the bottle. So I do think for one's health, for vitamin supplements, and I'm not recommending a particular brand, you're better off going with a name brand than going with a small, cozy, sounds cool, funky company, because it's not regulated.
Okay, it is now 8:30 p.m. here in San Diego. I would like to invite Venerable Miao Zhang for dedications of merits, and also Venerable has a donation for the Dharma Voices for Animals.
So before the dedication of merit, Bob, the president of Dharma Voices for Animals, would like to say a few words. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Hi, Ellen.
Hi, Bob.
Good to see you.
Always.
Excellent. I just really enjoyed it. I've heard you talk a couple times before, and each time I hear it, I just love it. So thank you so much. And you're a wonderful friend and colleague. So I yes, I've been vegan almost 20 years. Do you have any advice? So it wouldn't be directly for me, but for a lot of people that ask me about how to get started on a vegan diet. It requires some intention and some planning to change lifestyle, to change our diet. What can you say about that?
Yeah, no, and everyone's different. And so I think also having, one's part of a family, having family support, or at least understanding, or at least not opposition. So letting one's family members know what one is up to. I think for some people, some people do well by just diving in on the deep end of the pool and just going from being omnivorous to vegan in a day. For many people, incremental change is easier. Yeah. A lot of people, it depends on one's motivation. A lot of people find that being vegetarian first is easier, and doing that, and then slowly, over weeks or a month or so, eliminating the amount of going to vegan diet. So it's whatever's more comfortable. The vegetarian diets are healthier than omnivorous diets. Vegan diets are healthier still, or at least primarily whole food plant-based diets are healthier still. From an animal welfare point of view, if someone's vegetarian, not vegan, they probably have reduced the amount of harm they've caused by 80 or 90%. So that's huge. I think there's also a number of charities now. Veganuary, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. There's a number of others. They have 21-day or 28-day vegan kickstarts, and so one can follow the recipes and follow programs. That's another way to do it. I think also not expecting perfection the first month, and it's while from a health point of view, whole foods are better than processed foods. Generally, it's really okay to eat some processed foods. So don't kill yourself. Go buy some frozen dinners that are vegan, and heat them up in 6 minutes in the microwave, and that'll help a lot too. So it's common sense and incremental change and those kinds of things. So. I hope that answered your question. So.
Yes. So on behalf of Shifan Temple and everyone here, I'd like to express my gratitude and appreciation again for spending time and sharing with us all the knowledge about plant-based diet. And hopefully, after this lecture, we will have more people practice compassion towards all animals, and also, of course, for our planet, environment. And last but not least, we can always start from one day a month or meatless Monday in a week,
Yes.
slowly and gradually. Yeah. So before we end, let us do a dedication merits and transfer whatever wholesomeness that we have cultivated today. Cindy, would you like to share the slides, please? Yeah. So let us all join our palms. May kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity pervade all worlds. May we cherish and build affinities to benefit all beings. May Shan, Pure Land, and precepts inspire equality and patience. May our humility and gratitude give rise to great vows. Thank you. And also, as a token of appreciation, the temple would like to present a small donation to Dharma Voices for Animals, as well as one book written by Venerable Master Xing Yun, Embracing Nature, talking about ecology from a Buddhist perspective. So we are fortunate that we have our president here. So I'll pass it over to him. So Cindy, can you stop sharing the slides, please? Thank you. So let us we do it both ways. One in front of the camera.
Sure.
And then the other time is like in front of everyone.
Okay. Should I come up there?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you see us? Okay, yes, yes, yes. So,
We can see you.
Look at here. And then, right here. Yes. So, thank you again. Thank you. Thank you for recommending Dr. Kornberg and having this wonderful lecture.
Thank you for inviting us.
Okay, thank you.
Good idea.
Well, you convinced us. We're coming by every night to dinner.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be able to be part of your TBIF group tonight. I'm quite grateful. Thank you for the opportunity.